Have you ever wondered what happens when the high-impact, physically punishing world of professional wrestling slams headfirst into the lyrical warfare of hip-hop?
Oh, it's such a wild combination to think about.
Right. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're focusing on a performer who spent, really the last decade walking exactly that tightrope, blending two completely different art forms into one massive career. We're looking at the wild trajectory of Max Caster.
It's a fascinating subject because you are looking at the intersection of two very distinct types of performance art. Both of them rely heavily on audience manipulation and these larger-than-life personas.
Exactly. And to guide us today, we've got a fantastic stack of source material, primarily a comprehensive Wikipedia profile that tracks Caster's career from his absolute beginnings on the independent circuit back in 2015.
Right.
All the way through the chaotic twists, turns, and reunions of early 2026. And the mission for this deep dive, what we really want you to take away from this, is to figure out the actual mechanics of character reinvention.
Yeah, that's the core of it.
We're going to explore the blurred lines between sports and performance art, and look at how a modern entertainer navigates skyrocketing success, intense corporate controversy, and the relentless need to evolve, especially for an audience whose attention span just gets shorter every single year.
It really serves as a rich case study for anyone interested in modern personal branding. I mean, looking at a career trajectory like Caster's gives us a lens into the economy of attention. It shows us how a performer builds a visceral connection with an audience in real time, how they handle the friction when their specific brand pushes the boundaries of a corporate broadcast environment, and ultimately how resilience plays out on a very public stage.
Okay, let's unpack this by going back to the foundation. Because every superhero, or, every wrestling superstar, has an origin story.
They absolutely do.
Max Caster didn't just walk onto national television. He started his journey training under veterans Brian Myers and Pat Buck at their Create a Pro Wrestling Academy.
A very solid school.
Yeah. He makes his debut for the school's promotion in February of 2015. And he clearly has an immediate aptitude for the physical mechanics of the job. Because by December of that very same year, he becomes the inaugural Keiki champion.
Which is an important baseline to establish right away.
Right.
He wasn't just a gimmick or a novelty act from day one. He had a solid grounding in the actual nuts and bolts of professional wrestling. He spent years cutting his teeth on the independent circuit, wrestling for promotions like Combat Zone Wrestling.
TW,
Yeah.
Rocker.
Which fans know is a remarkably gritty, hardcore environment. He was out there learning how to take falls, how to pace a match, and how to read a small room.
But interspersed with that gritty, independent work is this absolutely bizarre, highly specific detail from the source material that I can't get over.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say.
Imagine you are a trained athlete, a champion in your local promotion, right? You get the call to take an appearance on WWE's flagship television show, Raw, in May of 2018.
The dream call.
The dream call. But you are there to showcase your athletic prowess. Caster was brought in to play a character named Frances, who was presented as one of Bobby Lashley's kayfabe sisters.
And for those who might not be deep into wrestling terminology, kayfabe is the foundational concept of the industry. It's the portrayal of staged events, storylines, and rivalries as if they are entirely real and true.
Right. So in the reality of the television show, he is literally playing this massive, muscular wrestler's sister.
Yes.
He is quite literally wearing a dress and a wig for a minor comedic segment where he just gets beat up. After years of training to be a gladiator, he's a punchline.
What's fascinating here is what that single cameo reveals about the entertainment industry at large. Think about the sheer willingness required to take on the most absurd, minor, and frankly embarrassing roles just to get a foot in the door.
Just to be on TV.
Exactly. You have a trained athlete willing to play a visual joke on national television because that's what the job required that day. It shows a dedication to the hustle. In the entertainment business, sometimes the most important ability is availability, even if it means putting on a wig.
So he takes these odd jobs, takes his lumps on the indie scene, and eventually that hustle catches the eye of a brand new promotion. In the summer of 2020, Caster makes his first appearance for All Elite Wrestling, or AEW.
But again, it's not an instant shot to the moon.
No, not at all. He debuts on their YouTube show, Dark. He comes in as a heel, doing everything he can to antagonize the crowd and make them boo him. He's teaming with two other wrestlers, Luther and Serpentico, in a losing effort against Jurassic Express. He was really just another guy trying to make an impression in a crowded locker room.
He was essentially a puzzle piece waiting for the right fit. In professional wrestling, you can have all the athletic talent in the world, but if the packaging isn't right, the audience won't invest. And that fit didn't happen until AEW president Tony Khan made a very specific creative decision.
Right. Tony Khan looks at the roster and decides to pair Caster with another up-and-coming wrestler named Anthony Bowens. In November of 2020, they officially sign a 5-year deal with the promotion, and a tag team called the Acclaimed is born.
A huge turning point.
Massive. They debut on AEW's main television show, Dynamite, in December, and within a week they are already challenging the Young Bucks for the Tag Team Championship. That is a massive escalation from wrestling on YouTube. How did they justify putting these two new guys in that spot so quickly?
A huge part of that rapid ascent was the presentation. They didn't just walk out and wrestle. They brought a completely unique energy that immediately commanded the audience's attention. They gave the crowd a reason to look up from their phones.
And that brings us to the gimmick that really put Caster on the map. His entrance style became absolute must-watch television. Instead of just walking to the ring to standard theme music like everyone else, Caster would rap live.
Live in the arena.
Yeah. He would deliver freestyle-style diss tracks aimed directly at his opponents as he walked down the aisle. It was aggressive, it was funny, and it was deeply rooted in hip-hop battle culture. And he took it seriously outside the ring, too, crossing over into releasing real music and putting out his debut album, critically acclaimed, Volume 1, in May 2021, under the moniker Platinum Max.
Think about the cognitive load of what you just described. The live diss track is an incredibly potent tool. It guarantees that the audience is listening to every single word you say before the bell even rings.
Right.
But it is incredibly difficult to execute. You are walking through a screaming arena, shooting your marks for the television cameras, preparing for a physically grueling athletic contest, and simultaneously delivering rhythmic, rhyming insults.
A lot to juggle.
It is. But the trap here is that the gimmick relies entirely on being topical, edgy, and provocative to get a reaction. When your entire persona is built on pushing boundaries on live or semi-live television, you are constantly playing with fire.
Which leads us directly to the events of August 3, 2021. This is a crucial pivot point in Caster's career. During an episode of AEW Dark, Caster made his entrance and delivered a rap that touched on several highly sensitive cultural topics.
Yeah, this was a major moment.
Just to lay out the exact contents impartially from our source, the rap referenced Olympic gymnast Simone Biles' mental health issues, the Duke lacrosse case,
Right.
the validity of PCR COVID-19 testing, and included a sexual joke directed at a 19-year-old female wrestler, Julia Hart.
And this is where the collision between independent performance art and corporate broadcasting standards becomes intensely apparent.
Just looking at the facts of the fallout here, AEW owner Tony Khan publicly called the rap terrible. He explicitly stated that it should have been edited out of the show before it aired. Khan then announced that he would personally be taking over the editing duties for the program moving forward. And as a direct result of the incident, Caster was pulled from several independent wrestling events and was temporarily removed from all AEW programming.
Looking at this purely from the mechanics of the entertainment business, without taking any political stance on the content of the rap itself, it perfectly illustrates the inherent risk of the attention economy.
How so?
Well, when a performer's brand requires them to be edgy and topical to cut through the noise, they have to constantly beta test their material in real time. They have to calibrate how far they can push the envelope.
Right, what works in one room might not work in another.
Exactly. What works in an underground rap battle or an untelevised independent wrestling show doesn't survive the scrutiny of a major broadcast network. You're dealing with sponsors, executives, and a global audience. The performer has to learn to thread that needle, maintaining their edge without crossing the red lines of their employer.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because controversy like that could have been a permanent derailment. For a lot of entertainers, that's the end of the national television run.
It happens all the time.
But Caster returned to action on September 1st of that year. And rather than fading away, the Acclaimed began a trajectory that would take them to the absolute pinnacle of the industry. So how do they bounce back from being pulled off television to becoming the hottest act in the company?
They managed a pivot that is incredibly difficult to pull off. They took the raw charisma that got them in trouble and refined it. They found a way to keep the energy of the battle rap, but directed it in a way that the mass audience could rally behind.
Starting in 2022, they aligned themselves with wrestling legend Billy Gunn and his sons, the Gun Club. This alliance eventually breaks down into a bitter rivalry, which culminates in a massive dumpster match in August 2022.
A classic wrestling stipulation.
It is exactly what it sounds like. The goal is to literally throw your opponents into a trash dumpster. The Acclaimed won the match, and in the aftermath, Billy Gunn's own sons turned on him. Billy then officially became the manager for the Acclaimed, which seemed to be the final piece of the puzzle.
That was the catalyst.
The crowd started reacting to them so overwhelmingly positively that they organically turned face, meaning they became the heroes of the story, not because the writers dictated it, but because the crowd demanded it.
The addition of a veteran like Billy Gunn lent them an air of credibility, but it was really that organic connection with the audience that forced the company's hand. In wrestling, the crowd is the ultimate arbiter. If they refuse to boo you, the company eventually has to make you the good guy.
And the championship stats from this era reflect that shift. It wasn't just popularity, it translated to real success. But I want to make sure we get the scope of this right. Just how dominant were they during this peak?
It was a historic run. By September 2022, at the massive Grand Slam event, the Acclaimed defeated Swerve in Our Glory, that's Swerve Strickland and Keith Lee, to win the AEW World Tag Team Championship.
And they held those belts for a long time.
140 days. Then, the following year, at the historic All-In event at Wembley Stadium, Caster, Bowens, and Billy Gunn won the AEW World Trios Championship.
Which is exactly what it sounds like,
Yeah.
a championship for three-man tag teams.
Right. And they held those titles for a record-breaking 238 days before finally losing them to Bullet Club Gold in April 2024.
So they are wrestling at the very top of the card. And the accolades poured in from outside the ring, too. Caster provided original tracks for the AEW Fight Forever video game, releasing a collection called Songs from a Video Game.
He was everywhere.
Alongside Bowens, he won the New York Post Male Breakout Wrestler of the Year for 2022 and the prestigious Wrestling Observer Newsletter Award for Most Improved in 2022. It seems like he finally figured out the exact formula.
I think to really understand why Caster peaked here, it helps to look at his personal background. There's a deeply rooted blend of influences in him.
Like his family history.
Exactly. On one hand, you have traditional athletic excellence. His father was Rich Caster, a former NFL player who sadly passed away in February 2024. So he has that physical sporting legacy in his blood. On the other hand, you have deep ties to modern culture. He's actually related to the rapper DC2 Trill. Caster is essentially synthesizing his family's traditional athletic background with contemporary hip-hop culture. It makes him an archetype of the modern performer. You can't just be a great athlete anymore. You have to be a compelling media personality.
But in the world of professional wrestling, the peak is never the end of the story. You can't just stay champion forever. The audience gets bored. Things have to keep moving.
It's a cyclical business.
By late 2024, the incredible record-setting run of the Acclaimed started to fracture. Caster began teasing a heel turn, a return to the dark side. He started dubbing himself the best wrestler alive and unilaterally declared himself the leader of the group.
Always a recipe for disaster in a team.
Oh, yeah. This tension finally snaps in January 2025 on an episode of Collision, where Caster officially disbands the Acclaimed after Bowens chooses to side with Billy Gunn over him. So he decides to go solo, which usually means a massive push to the top, right?
Actually, the exact opposite. AEW put him on one of the most brutal losing streaks I've ever seen on national television.
Right, that was rough to watch.
Caster initiated an open challenge series, and he just lost week after week. We're talking about losses to absolute heavy hitters. The timeline shows him dropping matches to Rush, Hangman Adam Page, Brody King.
Jay White, too.
Right, Jay White, Konosuke Takeshita, Hook, Mark Briscoe, Hologram, Daniel Garcia.
And ultimately, at the Dynasty Zero Hour event in April 2025, he's defeated by his own former partner, Anthony Bowens.
That is a staggering list of defeats for a guy who just held a title for 238 days.
Why would a company do that to one of their most popular stars?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to ask, why would a television show write a storyline where a former record-setting champion loses week after week? The psychology of a wrestling storyline is essentially about tearing a character down to rebuild them. Hooking a character to go on a massive losing streak strips the character down to the studs. It humbles the arrogant best wrestler alive persona he had adopted. It forces the audience to stop hating him and start pitying him.
It resets the emotional connection.
Exactly. Now, it's worth noting the execution didn't necessarily land with the critics. This storyline actually won the Wrestling Observer newsletter's worst feud of the year for 2025.
Ouch.
Yeah. But structurally, the intent is to create a rock-bottom moment that the character has to climb out of to earn the audience's respect again.
And climb out he did. The timeline brings us right up to the present day. In July 2025, after a match, Bowens assaulted Caster so severely that Billy Gunn actually had to physically intervene and hold Bowens back.
Reversing the roles?
Right. This sparked sympathy for Caster, teasing a turn back to being a hero. By September, that turn was cemented when Caster surprisingly fought alongside Bowens and wrestling legend Jerry Lynn against a faction called the Squirrel.
They temporarily reunited later that month to win a match.
And as we look at early 2026, Anthony Bowens is publicly talking about a potential full reunion for the Acclaimed. The cycle continues.
It always does.
So what does this all mean for you? When you look at this decade-long journey, what is the takeaway for the listener?
I think Caster's roller coaster career offers a surprisingly relatable lesson for anyone navigating their own professional life. Think about the media you consume and the brands you interact with, or even your own career path. You have the early days of doing whatever it takes to get noticed, even putting on a wig. You have the peaks of massive success where everything clicks. You have the valleys of intense controversy where you push the boundaries too far and face public failure. And you have the difficult periods of trying to strike out on your own and falling flat.
It's universal, really.
It is. When a brand or a career goes stale, you have to be willing to strip it down. You have to endure a figurative losing streak to figure out what doesn't work anymore. Sometimes that means reinventing yourself entirely. And sometimes it means finding your way back to the partnerships and the core identity that made you successful in the first place, but with the wisdom of the journey.
It really is a masterclass in survival. We've followed Max Caster from the independent gritty rings of CZW to wearing a dress on Raw, to dropping highly scrutinized diss tracks on YouTube, to holding championship gold at Wembley Stadium.
To hitting rock bottom.
Exactly. And now, seemingly finding his way back to his roots. It is a wild, unpredictable journey of an athlete who refused to just be one thing and who constantly beta-tested his own identity in front of millions of people.
This raises an important question, though, and it's something for you to think about long after we wrap up here.
What's that?
In our current era, athletes are increasingly expected to be entertainers, and entertainers are expected to perform like athletes. At what point does the persona completely swallow the person?
Wow, yeah.
If you perform a character, especially one as loud, aggressive, and provocative as a battle rapper, long enough, and across enough mediums, does that character simply become who you actually are? Where's the line between the performance you give to the world and the reality of who you are when the cameras turn off?
That is a phenomenal thought to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of personal branding, hip-hop, and headlocks. Keep questioning the media you consume, keep exploring the stories behind the spectacle, and we will catch you next time as we unpack another incredible piece of source material. Stay curious.